Nider is in it. Nider from Genesis of the Daleks, who, as we know, is the voice from the TARDIS in the Pandorica Opens.
Yeah, obviously.
As has been theorized on this podcast for years, literally for years.
Yeah. And and it was never really answered in Time of the Doctor. And maybe that would have improved the episode.
Could have done. It could have done.
If they just finally answered the question we already know the answer to. That's that Nider was the voice of in the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm. I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Lewis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
What did you think about Davros?
I liked it.
Did you?
I did.
Good. Good.
I thought that was the right response, so I went with it.
It's the correct response. It's the permissible response.
That's what I was hoping for.
Yeah, this was the first time you have heard a Sixth Doctor audio, is it not?
Yeah, that's true, assuming that we don't count the light at the end as a Sixth Doctor one, which, I mean, why would you?
I wouldn't. So.
Right. I mean, like, he's in it, but it's not really from his perspective or anything, so...
Right.
Well, I mean, it's, it's from the Doctor's perspective in some sense, I guess.
Yeah, he's just one of the many participants.
Right. And this is actually all Doctor, because there's no companion, really. I mean, like, there are companions, but they're not Perry.
Yeah, it would. I would assume that he mentions that his companion is currently at a botany convention.
Right,
which indicates to me that it is Perry.
Right.
Because she is a botanist.
That's right. I forget about that. That stands to reason, because you don't do anything outside of your profession.
No.
You have to. The only conventions you can attend are the ones that directly relate to your profession. Even when you're traveling with the Doctor.
That sounds about right to me.
So yeah, we got a lot of the Sixth Doctor. And, I always say this, but I really do like the Sixth Doctor. I like the Sixth Doctor too, but personally, I like him better on audio than I do on television. I'm inclined to agree, but I haven't seen the Sixth Doctor in television format in quite some time, so I'm not entirely sure. But I want to agree with you on that point.
Yeah, the primary difference between the television Doctor and the audio Doctor for Colin Baker is that on television, the Doctor is a lot meaner, and on audio, he is surprisingly soft, almost. Like, he is also mean, but you always end up finding out that meanness is like it protects. So it's like a shell that protects his very soft and caring and compassionate interior.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something that the audio's really brought out of the character that he never really got to do that much on TV. So Colin Baker is a good audio Doctor for that reason, among others. He also has just a very good voice, I think.
He does, and I know that this was recorded in 2003, but he does sound a lot younger in this than he did in Light at the End, which, I mean, obviously, a decade will do that to you. But it was kind of funny and surprising, just going from, because the last I'd heard of him was in The Light at the End. So now I'm hearing him a decade earlier, and he's sounding much more like the Sixth Doctor did when he was on television. And I don't know, I liked it, and I do like his voice. I agree.
Yeah, he is good at this stuff. So, what did you think of Davros?
I thought he was cool. I mean, it was not, it was nice. seeing him again because I don't know. I'm trying to think of like I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen him in that many. Well, actually, have I seen him in that many episodes? I feel like I watched a Sixth Doctor story in which he appeared.
That would be Revelation of the Daleks.
Okay, yeah. So I know he was. So I feel like I've seen him in that. I've seen him in Genesis of the Daleks.
Have you ever seen Remembrance of the Daleks? That's the Seventh Doctor one.
I might have.
That's the one that has Ace hitting a Dalek with a baseball bat.
Oh, I think I have seen that one. Okay, so I guess I have seen him in quite a bit, but I don't know. It was just nice to encounter him again because he's just so evil.
Yeah, he's very evil, and he's incredibly evil. And
yeah.
I thought this was a very good example of that, and it also did something that hadn't ever really been done before, as far as I know. Prior to this, it kind of went into his origins.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because it's because I was wondering how much of this had already been covered, and it seemed like it was all it was stuff that I'd never known about, and I didn't know about like his whatever pre-accident history or whatever. Oh, it wasn't really like an accident; it was like an attack or something. I don't really remember the exact details, but yeah. So it was very interesting, and I kind of liked finding out about this young Davros who like sort of had emotions but not really, and he's like
yeah
and it's kind of being built up as though he has emotions and he's like jealousy and all this stuff, but really he's just being like cold and calculating, or and it's there's even still a little bit of wiggle room where you might even say that he had some kind of emotion and he just is in denial about it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I ultimately fall down in my understanding of it, like because he doesn't even like eventually he executes Shan because I guess it's because he's jealous.
Right.
He has all of these things he says about how he needs to like secure his place in history as the preeminent scientist of the Kaleds, but that doesn't seem to hold up very well, as she kind of points out to him. Right.
So it could be that he was just rejecting his own emotions and continues to reject them in this, because it's kind of interesting how there's this sort of theme going on where like can Davros change, can he become good or whatever, and it kind of very quickly, I mean, like, and you knew he wasn't gonna. I mean, it wasn't. I guess I kind of wondered at one point whether or not he was gonna be reformed or whatever. But I mean, it's Davros.
Yeah.
And so it was more just waiting for the pendulum to swing the other way, and just to see how it swung. That really kept me interested, and swing it did. I enjoyed that. I thought that was kind of cool how he kind of seemed like he was being helpful for a bit, and then he just did like this abrupt 180 and became so evil.
Yeah, but even so, he did seem like he was kind of interested in like solving the famine and everything like that.
Right.
And trying to bring about a new age of prosperity for the galaxy, although he just had a very warped idea of what that would be.
True. Right, in his mind, this could be altruism, and I mean, in some sense, I understand the idea that the economy or whatever would be more efficient if it were just this big war machine, because that's happened in the past, where people all sort of come together to rally and fight this war or whatever, and that helps, but at the same time, it's pretty evil to just start a war just so you can fix the economy. So yeah, it's that is pretty warped.
Mm-hmm.
It's about as warped as you get.
And I think one of the most interesting aspects of it is that there's absolutely no Daleks at all in this.
That's true. That's funny, because you'd expect, and they do talk about the Daleks. They talk about them. They talk about this Dalek War, which it's funny because this was released before 2005, so the concept of the Time War hadn't even been developed yet. But is there an established Dalek War in the classic series?
There are a lot of them, I guess you might say. Like at this point, I have kind of lost track of what Dalek wars happen when.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Because I mean, there are Dalek wars that are referenced in the novels. There are Dalek wars that are referenced in some of the audios. I know that a war with Daleks forms part of the backstory of the companion Bernice Summerfield in the New Adventures novels, who is also in audios done by Big Finish. Big Finish also has a series called Dalek Empire that is just about a war against the Daleks that the Doctor isn't even in. It's just about Daleks. So there are all kinds of different Dalek-related conflicts, and so whenever I hear someone say something about, the war with the Daleks, I just roll with it, and I'm like, all right, I bet there was some kind of war with Daleks at some point. Sure.
Well, right, and it's because this is the human race we're talking about, so it could be that it could be that there is a really significant war between the Daleks and every other race in the galaxy or the universe or whatever, and for each of those races, that one war is just referred to as the Dalek War, and so saying the Dalek War all refers to different wars for these people. But they're all really significant for those people, despite being all different. Because the Daleks get around a lot.
Yeah, I don't. I'm looking on the Doctor Who Wikia, the TARDIS Wikia, to see if there's any insight into what particular war might be referenced, and it just doesn't seem to know. It just says the Daleks have not been active in this summer of the galaxy since the end of the last Dalek War a century earlier. So we don't really know when.
So I mean,
just some war.
So it's interesting though that the Daleks were kind of, or it seems the Daleks were defeated, or at least just kind of retreated back to other wars, and there's this section of the galaxy that the Daleks aren't in. But yeah,
Mm-hmm. But they aren't part of the story, and Davros's plan doesn't seem to involve like going to find them or teaming up with them again. He just has his own thing, I guess. In this particular instance, he's just not interested in Daleks.
Right, he's kind of done with that, the whole Daleks thing. Well, and it's true, the Daleks always do seem to turn on him. So, at this point, why bother? Fool me once, shame on you or whatever. But, so...
I mean, he does team up with them again.
Well, that's true, because this would have to happen... Well, obviously this has to happen before the Seventh Doctor, and also before, Journey's End.
To be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% sure whether from Davros's perspective it does happen before the Seventh Doctor, but at the very least it's before the Time War, so it's before Journey's End.
Right, that's true.
And there are also like a half dozen other Big Finish audios in which the Doctor meets Davros and there are Daleks involved, so it probably happens before some of those too. So the Davros timeline is another thing I just don't really worry about.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's... I feel oftentimes, 9 times out of 10, it's just better to not worry about timelines when it comes to different characters who aren't the Doctor. Well, and another thing was, because it sounded like he was put to death at the start, or he was expected to take his own life at the beginning.
Well, that is that's from his time on Skaro.
Well, okay, so
that's a flashback to right after his accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where he's given the injection thingy and the opportunity to kill himself, and then the flashbacks from that point they go backwards.
Okay.
Until they don't, and then they stop going backwards and they start going forwards. It's very confusing.
Yeah, I was very confused by those flashbacks. Okay, so this was... See, in my mind... Oh, I guess that does make sense. I don't know.
Yeah, so at the very beginning of the play, even before the theme kicks in, he has this rant that he's saying about how he has this injector and he can take his own life, but he's not going to. And then there's some, Doctor Who stuff with, Doctor getting out of the TARDIS and being like, where have I landed this? Well, he doesn't actually say that, but, the usual stuff about, like, Doctor Who, adventure, yada. And then there's another Davros flashback where it's a flashback to them giving him the injector right after the accident.
Right.
And then there's a flashback to him being found right after the accident. So they kind of work their way backwards.
Right. Okay, yeah. So where was he found? Where was his body found? That's I guess something that... Because he wasn't actually dead, but he was kind of...
Right, so by this point, Genesis of the Daleks has already happened, and I think that a couple of the other Davros stories have happened as well. So this picks up after, honestly, I don't know what it picks up after. I guess it picks up probably after Resurrection of the Daleks, which is the one with the Fifth Doctor.
Okay. I don't believe I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, okay, that makes some amount of sense. Well, and I was kind of wondering where this whole being dead thing fit into the storyline that we were already aware of.
Yeah, as a general rule, pretty much every story ends with Davros appearing to die.
Right.
Yeah, like for instance, the one in in Resurrection of the Dogs, it ends with him appearing to die at the hands of a virus. So,
right.
So that happens, and then apparently he didn't, though.
So he's just really resilient, and that's even sort of mentioned in this episode. You know, his spaceship crashes and apparently explodes, but even the doctor's like, yeah, he's probably not dead.
He just assumes.
You're right. It's not even. He doesn't even want to go check the wreckage or whatever. He's just like, yeah, he's not dead.
At that point, it's probably pretty smart just to assume that he's not dead.
Right, Although, I guess the doctor is perfectly content with just, like, leaving that situation alone. Like, he's not going to go try and, like... Well, I mean, like, he wouldn't try to kill Davros himself. I mean, as is brought up over the course of the story, he doesn't want to do his own dirty work, so to speak. So he probably wouldn't just, run over to the wreckage, with a gun or something, and just to make sure Davros is actually dead. But yeah, so he's perfectly content to just leave, though, assuming he's not dead, but not, verifying, which is fine.
Sure.
It's better. I like it better than the doctor being convinced that he's defeated forever this time.
This time, I think he really is gone forever. Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. So it's just like a tiny bit genre savvy, I guess I want to say. Where he's even the doctor realizes, yeah, this was too easy. He's not actually dead. But yeah, so that's nice if nothing else. It was a nice change.
Yeah. I thought the doctor was a little unnecessarily mean to Davros at points.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Like, which point specifically?
Well, there was one point, and I mean, most of the time it's pretty justified, but there's one point where he makes fun of Davros for his disability.
Wait, when was this?
He says something like, I don't remember, he says something like, I know you won't stand for that, no offense intended. Or something like that, or I don't know, it was some use of the word stand. And then he said, yeah. No offense intended. In a really, snarky way that made it clear that all offense was intended.
Yeah, I guess that is a little bit harsh. That kind of is, even for the doctor. There's no lack of ammunition to ridicule Davros for. You don't need to bring the one thing he couldn't control into the mix. I mean, he's got plenty of faults. You don't need to pick on that. That's just mean. Although
it is suggested here that he probably could control it. He could have cloned himself a better body.
That's true.
That's brought up here.
Yeah. So it is his fault. He's just being selfish.
Yep.
He likes his own body. He's creeped out by the idea of copying himself or whatever. He needs to get over that.
Mm-hmm. On the subject of Davros' origins, once again, eventually, Big Finish went on to expand on the ideas here, and they did a giant 4-part miniseries all about Davros' early life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the characters from the flashbacks here reappear, like Shan is in it, and it's called I, Davros.
Huh.
And yeah, it's pretty good.
Interesting. So wait, does it feature the Doctor at all?
Nope.
Huh. Interesting.
It goes pretty much right before Genesis of the Daleks. It starts with him as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And it goes right up to Genesis of the Daleks.
So is Davros like a sympathetic character? Like, do we feel bad for him?
I don't. You might. I don't
know. But he's not portrayed that way specifically. Like, it's not like... I guess, I'm trying to figure out if he's like Walter White or something, in the early seasons, where like eventually you watch him turn bad, break bad, if you will.
I think it's kind of like that, but it's not like he's never like a dopey, TV dad. He starts off being like a precocious and kind of troubled kid, and then he eventually becomes a horrible, tyrannical, creator of Daleks. And you sort of go through all the stages of his life. And Nider is in it. Nider from Genesis of the Daleks, who, as we know, is the voice from the TARDIS in the Pandorica Opens.
Yeah,
obviously.
But that's neat, though, because I'd kind of like to know more about Davros. I think and I guess what makes him so evil. I guess that's really what I'm looking for.
Well, it's just the way he is.
I guess so.
He was born from a society that was in an endless and pointless war.
Well, that'd do it,
Mm-hmm.
Wonder how things would have been different if there hadn't been a war for Davros to come up with all these sick, twisted experiments for.
Well, like in this audio, he kind of says to the Doctor that perhaps in some other strange world, you and I could have been friends or colleagues.
That's right.
And perhaps that's what would have happened. He would have become friends with the Doctor. They would have been friends. Maybe he could have been a companion.
Oh yeah. There you go. He definitely could have. Actually, that'd be kind of a neat. That can be a neat story if
a neat AU.
Right.
Universe.
Right. Exactly.
He's probably almost as good at maths as Adric.
Oh yeah. So maybe he could, I don't know, cause some cataclysmic event on some other planet.
Probably.
Kill off whatever that planet's equivalent to the dinosaurs are.
Yeah, one assumes so.
I do like the idea of the Doctor and Davros kind of be forced to work together for this corporation.
Yeah, I like it. I like it because for a while at the beginning, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is.
Like they do, like they have that advertisement that Davros sees that really seems to captivate him, which was good. And then they have the implant in the Doctor's brain. And then there's all this kind of there's this goofy thing where the Doctor shows up late for work and then ruins all of Davros's stuff, and it's like, oh, I'm so mad. It's very amusing at first.
Yeah, but I do like it. I like the I don't know. I like it. I like the idea that Davros got to work early and was like this go-getter, and he's like making the Doctor look bad. I just like all of it.
Mm-hmm. He's a go-getter.
Because it's not like this is the first time that a good character in a TV show or other media has appeared to turn good, but it's kind of like this thing that I still enjoy seeing. Just in general, and I enjoyed seeing it here.
Yeah,
because Davros isn't exactly someone you'd expect that to be possible for, but so yeah.
No, yeah, because his evil is so over the top, and so horrifying.
Right.
And indeed, he gets back there in the end.
Yep, he does.
So Zoe is in this. Zoe from the Patrick Troughton era, the companion Zoe.
Oh, is she?
Well, the actress is.
Okay, well, that's yeah.
The character isn't in this, but Wendy Padbury is in this. She plays Mrs. Baines.
Ah. Mm-hmm. Oh, how about that?
I actually really like that character.
Mrs. Baines?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of or at least it was a good character, but what I mostly liked about it was the sort of idea of like a historical revisionist take on Davros, where like historians eventually decide that they need to reevaluate Davros and maybe see another side of him.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting that Davros could have fans or whatever, and it's kind of funny that they almost come off sounding like conspiracy theorists, like oh no, it's just you only think he's evil because that's what society has told you. Wake up, Sheeple, or whatever. So yeah, it's just kind of funny that could even exist. But I mean, it is interesting because that's something being someone who is familiar with, obviously watching stories in which Davros is present, and you're actually seeing just how evil he is. You'd think like, oh, there's no way he could possibly have anything remotely resembling a supporter who's not a Dalek or whatever. But here we see that there are people who are just so far removed from the idea of of Davros and understanding what he's like, that they could have this idea that, like, well, maybe he wasn't as bad as history portrays him.
Because that's the kind of thing that historians in the real world do sometimes, where like if you're watching a documentary on the History Channel or something, you'll sometimes just get this one historian who has like a really counterintuitive view of something about history, and they'll say, what a lot of people think is that Julius Caesar was this way, but actually, it's really the exact opposite because of this, and this, and then like will be present like they'll try to get someone who's going to present a counter narrative to what maybe the experts are saying, because I think that kind of perspective can be sort of, I don't know, there's something about it that's really interesting, because people would always rather be surprised than be told like something they already know.
That's true.
So it doesn't surprise me that, like, in a world where Davros exists and does terrible things, that hundreds of years later someone would want to look back on it and say, there's actually another side to this, even though it's so blatantly obvious from watching the television show Doctor Who that in this world there is no other side to it. He's just really horrible.
Right, yeah, and it kind of obviously, Doctor Who being a television show, it is painted as being very black and white. Like, obviously, Davros is very evil. He's just an evil guy. Although this almost seems like kind of a more realistic kind of thing. Is like, maybe there actually was like the sort of optimism that there may have been like a better side to Davros is something that could conceivably be possible in like the real world, because usually things aren't as clear cut and there is some level of ambiguity and just gray areas and whatnot. But that's just obviously in something like Doctor Who, where it's we are meant to understand that Davros is definitely the villain and always will be. It's kind of interesting to have this sort of more realistic idea that, like, maybe he's not, but he actually is. Yeah, well, I think where this kind of goes is that everyone has layers you don't see, and obviously, like, Davros being this sort of snarling, shouting maniac is kind of quote unquote unrealistic, but like when you dig real deep and get down to those deeper layers under Davros, you do find more layers, and they're also horribly evil. Yeah. So it's not that he doesn't have layers. He does have layers. It's just all of them are evil. That's true. He has different kinds of evil. It's like, how you have like a double chocolate cake that has like it's all chocolate, right? But there's different kinds and textures and varieties of chocolate. Yeah, that's a good point. Davros is exactly like a double chocolate cake. Mm-hmm. I see it now. I thought Davros had some really good lines. I liked towards the end he said that graveyards are full of the indisposable. I thought that was a cool line. Yeah, that is a good one. And kind of goes to really highlight how evil and ruthless he is. Like you think you're necessary, but I could probably do without you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's pretty good. I agree. It is pretty good. He also at one point, because I forget exactly what it was. I think there's like a fire alarm going off or something. And Davros says that the Doctor is more dangerous than a mere fire. And, and I have to wonder, does he also believe that the Doctor is like fire, just as Martha does? Stand too close, you get burned. I wonder if that's how Davros feels. I don't know. Because he didn't stand, but he got pretty close to the Doctor, and he did get burned. So he did. So it holds true. He truly, truly did. He got horribly burned. Yes, he did. Sometimes when we talk about a televised serial, we like to talk about where it stands in the Mighty 200 poll. Oh, yeah. But there is no such poll for the audio dramas. Huh. However, there's a website called The Time Scales. Okay. Which has all of these Doctor Who audio dramas, and people can vote on a scale of 1 to 10 for how good they think it is. Ah. And this is the highest rated Sixth Doctor story on the site.
Actually, no, it's tied with Perry and the Piscon Paradox.
Okay.
So, which I haven't actually heard. So,
Oh.
yeah. So this is considered the best Sixth Doctor one.
Well, I believe it. Well, that's a little bit.
I don't actually agree, but there are a couple that I like better. But
well, I believe that it is considered to be.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good because it's true.
I don't believe that it necessarily is because I haven't heard any other ones, so I can't say for sure if it's true. No, it is definitely very good, and it's an interesting story, and I do definitely like it a whole lot.
It's good stuff.
It is good. It is good stuff. The one thing though that this happens whenever. This happens a lot in television shows and other such media where you will have a character who is kind of a genius, and so to show that they're a genius, they will come up with a formula or an equation or something that, could cause the collapse of, society as we know it or whatever, as happens in this story. And it's, I guess
in this case you're referring to the equation that predicts the stock market.
Right, exactly. And it always kind of bothers me a little bit because it's not actually, I don't know, real, I guess I want to say. And I realize that this is fiction, but I realize this is just a story, but at the same time but at the same time, it just seems implausible to me. And I mean, it's never, obviously this equation is never discussed at length, like the actual mathy bits of it. It's described as what it can do, but it's not actually, Davros mentions there are patterns or whatever, and and they are patterns that only he can see, which obviously, because he's a genius or whatever. And we're just expected to sort of roll with that. But I mean, it kind of takes me out of it because, obviously the writer of this story is not such a genius. I'm not
What have you got against Lance Parkin?
I have nothing against the man. I'm sure he's rather intelligent, but he's not Davros level intelligent.
Well.
But so, obviously, and there's just something that kind of, there's like a connection that I just can't make in my mind. Like I just can't. I'm not willing to bridge that sort of leap of faith, or just I know. Once again, I know it's a story, but and then I don't know. I also think it's a little bit silly to say that it's just the idea that there's just something doesn't sit right with me that there is there can exist in this universe an equation that could cause the complete collapse of the economy as they know it, and which obviously Davros arrived at just by observing data that was freely available, and it's not something. Well, I mean, I guess we're meant to assume it is something that only Davros could do, but theoretically anyone could do it. Given that they have the same data, and so the entire economy or whatever hinges on this equation never being discovered, and so at the end of the story it's destroyed, but that doesn't mean anything because anyone could come along, and not anyone, but anyone with a similar level of intellect could come along and do exactly what Davros did, and thus bring about this collapse.
Well, maybe it didn't even really work.
Well, right, because he only tested it.
Yeah, he tested against 500 years of data, but what if this is next year is different?
Well, that's true. That's another good point. Is he tested it against the past, which is a fairly good way to test it, but at the same time, you can't really be sure until you test the future. I mean, he would have to wait, I don't know, a year or two, and see if the equations still panned out. So yeah, it could be that it doesn't actually work. And he would have really had egg on his face, if he had survived. Well, he has survived the crash.
But yeah, well, the thing is, it's not an equation that crashes the economy.
No, I know. It's that it can predict it and it assumes that if it got out that it would cause a collapse because it could predict the stock market.
Well, maybe just no one else has ever thought to try.
Well,
because
fair.
because everyone, I just assume that they're unpredictable. I think most people just assume that.
So if someone just came at it from so it's just kind of this thinking outside the box. If you came at it with the idea that it is actually predictable, then suddenly that will give you the insight you need to realize it is predictable.
You would also need to be a mathematical genius, apparently, which I guess Davros is. So Adric could do it.
Right. So Adric is capable of just causing the collapse of society as we know it, if he didn't already collapse dinosaur society as they knew it.
Yes, exactly. Adric could come up with the equation, but he'd never know if he was right.
Exactly. And I'm fine. I'm fine with it. And another thing though is once the equation got out, would the equation be able to predict the effect that its own existence would have?
That's a good point.
Because I'm assuming, because would it become less accurate as more and more people found out about it and they were thus doing things differently? Or maybe that's what causes the collapse, is that it's sort of like this feedback loop where its discovery just creates this cycle that eventually sort of flatlines or whatever. That could be, I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. Yeah, it would seem to me that if there was an equation that would that could predict the stock market, then what it would do is it would destabilize everything all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. But once all that information got out again, then everyone would be on an equal footing, which would mean that they'd all be playing the game at a different level now, but there would still be a game to play.
Right.
Unless the initial destabilization was so catastrophic that it destroyed the market entirely, which I guess is what the assumption is.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about economics.
Yeah, me neither, except for one economics class I took once.
It's a lot more than me.
Well, it didn't help me all that much because
they didn't cover this.
No, they didn't. They didn't cover Davros's equation to destroy the intergalactic economy. But it's a real shame. That might have been, Econ 102 that I just didn't take.
Yeah.
Aside from the existence of such an equation, I'm completely content to just say it exists and just roll with it, which is what is expected of me.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. So this is actually part of a quote unquote trilogy.
Oh right, I saw that on Wikipedia, but I don't know what that. I didn't really look into it.
They're not narratively connected stories, but they did a series of stories, like one called Omega, which features the Fifth Doctor in Omega, and one called Davros, which features the Sixth Doctor in Davros, and one called Master, which features the Seventh Doctor and the Master. And this was part of the lead up to their 50th release in their main monthly series of Doctor Who audios, which is called Zagreus, and featured the Eighth Doctor and something called Zagreus.
I see.
Yeah. Eventually, we will probably listen to Master because I put it in the randomizer. But I didn't put Omega in there. So I just picked something else instead.
I see. Well, I look forward to Master then.
Mm-hmm.
Is Master as good as Davros?
I probably like Master better than I like Davros.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well then.
Yeah, but the time scales doesn't agree with me. Or don't agree with me. I don't know.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, the time scales has Master scored at 8.5, whereas this is scored at 9.
So close, but still
no
less.
Cigar.
Yes, exactly. Interesting. Well, I guess I'll have to wait and see who I side with. You or the timescales.
I guess you shall.
I noticed there may have been more, but there were 2 instances where, I guess in order to fit the story better or just give it a more Doctor Who kind of feel, they took common expressions that exist in English and sort of repurposed them. And I feel like they make less sense now.
What would these be? I don't remember them.
Well, at one point, Mr. Baines, he calls the reporter an asteroid hugger.
Yes, okay, I remember that.
Which, I mean, I guess that is the outer space equivalent of a tree hugger, but I thought the point of, being a tree hugger was, you cared about living things and the environment and stuff, and I don't think, pollution affects asteroids.
No, well, it might.
Well, that's true.
Certain kinds of pollution might affect it more than others.
That's true. Maybe some type of radiation could, I don't know, just destroy the asteroid, and then I guess that's a tragedy.
Or maybe I would assume that would have something more to do with, mining that probably destroys asteroids for mining purposes.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so not pollution specifically, but harmful corporate activity.
Okay. But I guess, is there do we like it? Do we like asteroids? Do we like them? Is there some function they serve when they are whole that they can't serve when they're chunks?
Maybe future hippies want to preserve them for cultural reasons, or maybe there's some good environmental reasons for preserving asteroids that we don't know about yet.
That could be. I suppose I should give this future the benefit of the doubt. But then also there was, I think it was the doctor said that there was this, expression that a Dalek can't change his bumps.
I thought in that particular case that he was being a smartass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think he's actually quoting an expression. I think he's quoting the real expression, the Earth expression, which seems to vary. Sometimes it's like a tiger can't change its stripes. Sometimes it's like a leopard can't change its spots. It's always some cat can't change its pattern.
Right.
But did you think the Dalek bump thing made less sense?
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like their casing can't be repaired or replaced.
Okay, that's actually true. But yeah, I think the doctor was just quoting it deliberately misquoting it to make a bad joke.
Okay, well, in that case, I can let it slide. Also, is Davros familiar with Shakespeare? I mean, like, the doctor specifically points out that he's misquoting Shakespeare, but does that mean Davros just repurposed a Shakespeare quote to fit Scarrow in there, or is it just this massive coincidence that there's also this great Kaled playwright?
No, I don't think that's what it is. I think he's deliberately quoting Shakespeare in that case, because
okay.
By this point it's after Davros was. I mean, Davros's early life was all lived on Scarrow, but by this point he's been out and seen the wider universe.
Okay,
so he may well have read Shakespeare at some point. I don't know. I don't know why he would, but
so as a part of, like, I don't know, home planet pride, he sort of modifies it to be like, yeah, Scarrow instead of Earth.
Yeah.
All right, that's fine.
It's kind of funny though, because there's another audio, this one featuring the Eighth Doctor, called "The Time of the Daleks," which features Daleks who are masquerading as Shakespeare scholars.
What?
Daleks who are claiming to be Shakespeare scholars.
That's kind of amazing.
They quote Shakespeare a lot in it, and the idea is, like, they don't just like come to like an Earth university and apply for jobs in English departments. That's not what I mean. But like, there's like a plot that has to do with Shakespeare being taken out of time, and they come along claiming to want to help. Because they love Shakespeare so much.
Okay, so maybe they got that love of Shakespeare from Davros.
Could be.
Okay. Well, there you have it. I guess that all makes sense then.
Yeah, pretty much.
I withdraw my criticism.
Good. Shall we pick the next story randomly that we will be watching after Davros?
I think we shall.
Okay, so I am firing up the random selector. The random selector is making its random selection, and it has randomly selected The Three Doctors.
Ah.
The Three Doctors.
Haha.
And I assume you know which three.
I think I do.
The first three.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And this was the one that William Hartnell participated in but couldn't really participate in.
Yeah, and he is there. He just doesn't participate very actively.
Okay. Right. That's what I thought.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's a story.
Well,
It's the 10th anniversary special.
there you have it.